Alright, you're welcome to this video. Before we begin, first of all, I would like to tender an apology. I've been away for about 2 weeks plus, but I've still been getting a lot of views across all my videos, even though I've not been posting. So thank you very much. Thank you for keeping the channel active even though I don't drop as much as I used to. So I thought I'd just put that out there and say thank you before we begin to work on this top. Alright, so let's begin cutting the top. I've rolled out some basic lines that I would use to draft the bodice that is underneath. This, what is under all of these gathers that you can see, is simply just a tube, a bustier tube that's underneath. Alright, so that's what I've started doing here. This line here is my shoulder line. This line here is the bust line. This is the under bust length, and this line here is the end of the top. Alright, from my under bust, from the under bust length. Alright, from the under bust length, I came down by 3 inches. So this is a 3-inch gap we have here. Alright, so that now that we have this, the next thing is simply just to place all of our measurements down. This is a very easy top to make. Alright, this is what I was trying to explain to the person that sent me the picture initially, that is really easy. So I'm going to place my bust divided by 4. Bust is 34 divided by 4, 8.5. I'm going to place that here. I'm going to place my under bust round, or my under bust length. From here to here was my under bust length. Alright, this is my shoulder line. The space I've kept at the top is ½ inch for my allowance. So I'm going to simply place my under bust length here. My under bust round is 28 divided by 4, 7. And then I'm going to place the same thing at the end of the top. Alright, and then I'm going to connect my lines together. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come away from the top and I'm going to make a mark at 6 inches. Alright, after you make a mark at 6 inches away from the top, next thing we're going to do, you're going to mark your bust point to bust point. For me, that is the bust point of the nipple to nipple is 7 divided by 2 is 3.5 plus ½ an inch for sewing allowance is 4 inches. I'm going to mark 4 inches here, mark 4 inches here, and I'm going to mark 4 inches here. Then I'm going to rule a line from bottom to the top. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the front here. Now this point here, we're going to have a tube underneath. Alright, so it's going to be a bustier tube and it's going to come, I want to make it a sweetheart, even though you are really not going to see it. It's going to be a sweetheart and then go into the bust line that we have here. So we're going to come to the front. I don't want the front to be as deep as this armhole part here would be. I'm going to make a mark at 2 inches here. Alright, and here I'm going to make a mark at just 1 inch. Alright, you see this? In case you are new to sewing and you don't understand when I just jumped in and you had all the lines, even after I've explained it, I'm going to drop a video in the description on how to draft an off-shoulder bustier. Then there I take it step by step and I mark all the points. This is pretty elementary, so I just wanted to skip a few steps, being that most people would understand when they see the lines. But in case you are confused, there's a link to a video in the description on how to draft an off-shoulder bustier. Check that out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simply come over to the top here. I'm going to mark ½ inch to the left and ½ inch to the right, ½ inch away from the midline. At the bottom here, I'm going to mark 0.75 to the left and 0.75 to the right. So I'm taking out 1½ inch here total, and here I'm taking away 1 inch. Okay, I'm going to rule a line from here to the middle, here to the middle, out to here, and straight down. Just watch and see how I rule the lines. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place back all of my allowances. Now before I place my allowances, I'm going to first of all have to pay back here 1 inch, over here to pay for the 1 inch gap. Over here we've taken away 1.5. We're going to place 1.5 inches here and another 1.5 inches here. And then we're going to keep an extra 1 inch, because of when we're joining this back together, we'll take away ½ inch here, ½ inch here. In fact, there'll be ½ inch everywhere as we are sewing both of them together. So with that, we're going to need an extra 1 inch. Alright, so this 1 inch for sewing together, and the 1 inch that we've taken out, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. This 1 inch for the sewing plus this 1.5, 1 plus 1.5 is equal to 2.5. So that's the allowance that we will need to, that's the amount we need to add to pay back for all of what we have done here. And then we'll keep an extra 1 inch. That's just going to be what will be left after we have sewn the edge. All right, we're going to place 3 inches here, 3.5, here 3.5. I'm going to connect the lines together. So with this, we have drafted the front. The next thing is to draft the back. So how I'm going to go about it is I'm going to simply just extend all these lines all the way down. Alright, so we know that this is where the front pattern stops. Now it's time for us to draft the back. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to roll a line, a straight line over here. This is going to mark where the back starts from. Alright. So after we've marked all of this, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to come to the middle at 4 inches here. Now at this point here, though I'm not going to cut it out, I intend to hold a ½ inch dart, a 1 inch dart, that's ½ inch to the left, ½ inch, where I'll pinch the bottom and then taper out towards the top. I intend to do that here. So that's going to affect how I keep my allowance. At the top part here, I'm going to place, normally I'm supposed to place 1 inch here, but because of this allowance here, at the bottom here I'm going to need 2 inches. Alright, I'm going to need 1.5 here, and at the top here I'm not going to need anything because the dart is going to start big at the bottom and taper out to nothing. That's how I'm going to hold my allowance on the side. Make sure that when you are holding the top, try and hold as little as possible. Alright, so with that, I've basically cut out my front and my back. I'm not going to add any allowance in front of here because I'm going to add loops and I want to have a little space between the loops, but not so much. So I'm not going to reduce the size of the back, but I'm not going to add allowance in front of it. I hope that that's clear. Let's start to cut everything out. So here I have my center of the front, side of the front, and then I have the pattern for the back. If you notice, I made a little notch here to mark the dart point. Also, the next thing is to transfer these patterns to my fabric and to my lining. I'm not going to make any changes to the pattern because we've done all here. So I'm going to simply iron on, I'm going to simply iron on fusible, woven fusible interfacing to my fabric, and I'll pad it a bit. If you don't know how to pad, I have a video also on how to pad an off-shoulder bustier. Link is in the description. I'm going to go ahead to iron some interfacing onto my fabric. Alright, so here I have the front, side, and the back. Alright, so this is the back, this is the side of the front, and where did I put it? And this is the center of the front. You can see I've ironed on interfacing onto my fabric. If you can hear any noise in the background, please, I'm sorry, there's some construction going on in my building. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to head back to my sewing machine and I'm going to join the side of the front to the center of the front by ½ inch on the left, and I'm going to join here with here, consuming ½ inch as well. Alright, so let me go and do that and I'll be back. Alright, so I have joined the fabric. The next thing is to repeat the same step on my lining. Alright, so I'll join the side of the front to the center of the front and I'll be back. Alright, so I've gone ahead to do the same thing to my lining. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dart the back. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do after I have darted the back, look at ½ inch here, nothing at the top, is I'm going to join the front to the back on the sides, consuming 1 inch. Remember, 1 inch is what we kept, so we'll have to consume 1 inch now by joining it like so. Alright, I'll simply just sew 1 inch from top to bottom over here and do the same thing over here. I'll also repeat the same step on my lining. Alright, so now I have built the front and the lining. The next step is to build the gathers that's going to be fixed on the front part of this. So how do you go about that? The first thing you would need to do is you will take the length of the top and add 3 inches and add 2 inches to it, sorry. If you remember, after my underbust length, I came down by 3 inches, and that gave us 17 because the underbust length is 14. I'll add an extra 2 inches to that number, and then you multiply that by 2 and cut your fabric. So if we have 19 from here to bottom, 19 multiplied by 2 should give us 38, around 38. Let me make sure of that. 19 multiplied by 2, yes, 38. So I will cut a piece of fabric that is 38 inches wide, alright, so that by the time I want to create the entire fold, the top part of the fold would be a folded edge. You won't have a joining there, so that it doesn't look how much like an amateur made it. And the joining will be at the bottom only. And then for the length of it, I'm going to cut it by 60 inches. From here to here is pretty small. I doubt it's even up to 20. It's 16, all right. So gathering 60 into 16, that should give us enough fold. So let me go ahead and cut. So here you can see it. This is what I was talking about. If by the time we fold it from here, from the end here to here, it's 19 inches, but you can see there's a fold, so this is 38. So that by the time we are gathering it on, the folded edge is at the top. As for the length of the whole thing, I cut it by 60 inches, all right? So from the beginning here all the way down to the end here is 60 inches, and from here to here is 38 inches. So now the next thing I want you to do is I want you to iron everything. You see the way I folded it to explain the whole thing. I want you to iron everything folded like this, so that the midline, the middle is a defined edge, all right, because that will help us when we want to start ironing on our interfacing, because it's interfacing that will make it strong like that, all right. Now when it's time to iron on your hardener, you have different options. This is more expensive. This is collar stay. Now this is really hard to make it to stand, and you know it will be very, very stiff when it's up there. So this, you can use this, but if you're on a budget, you can use interfacing and it will still be okay, but just make sure you get a hard interfacing, all right. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm using collar stay for mine. I'm going to go ahead to iron collar stay to half of my pattern. So I'm going to iron collar stay onto this side. I'm not going to iron it onto this side, just on one side alone, from here all the way to the midpoint that we ironed, all right. Alright, so I've gone ahead to iron mine. You can see I did best of both worlds. I have the peplum steel, more expensive and stiffer one at the top and at the bottom, because I don't need it to stand. You know, at the bottom it's just facing out, so the weight is not, they need for it to have a lot of strength. It's not that important. At the top, you need it to stay up permanently and to be straight. So I put the harder one at the top, alright. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to sew this, alright. I'm going to start from here. I'm going to sew half an inch from here. When I get to the angle, I'm going to keep going all the way to the other side, all right? But when I get to the middle, like from here to here, I'll keep a space of like 10 inches that will allow me to turn everything inside out, all right? So I'm going to sew from here all the way across to this side where I'm going to go up. So I'm going to come from the other side here and go up, but I'll leave a space that will allow me to turn everything inside out. Alright, so now I'm going to turn everything inside out and I'm going to iron it, alright? Just to smoothen out the face, but you see the hole I kept here. Turn everything inside out through this space. So here I'm done ironing it, and you can see already that the whole thing is staying stiff and it's staying up. So let's head over to our sewing machine where I show you how we place this onto the body. Alright, so here we have our bodice. Alright, this is the bodice and this is the gathers that we're going to fix on top of it. So we are starting from the edge over here, and I'm going to stitch it, and I'll have to consume the entire 60 inches or 59 inches, because remember we stitched half inch on the side, but I'll have to consume the entire 59 inches before I get to the end here. So it's simple, just make gathers. Make sure you keep the stiff. If you end up working with two interfacings like I did, make sure to keep the harder one facing the top. That's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to stitch this all the way across right at the underbust length. Alright. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join the top part. So I'm going to join from the edge here around the bust all the way to this other side over here. Alright. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make notches so that this will turn inside out smoothly. Alright. So the next step is to create the loops that our rope is going to pass through, and for this I cut 2 inches by 24 inches. So now I'm going to start fixing the loops. As I stitch down, I'm going to fold one like so, and I'm going to place it. After 1 inch, I'll place another one. After 1 inch, I'll place another one. I'll make sure that I place 4 of these loops before I stop, before I get to the end. Alright, so I finished making the laces. The next thing is just to I finished creating the loops. It's just to create a long lace, like I said, 50 inches long, that you use to loop behind the back. And I'm going to go and iron this so that everything lays perfectly flat. And that's how you go about making something like this. If you've watched this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.